Senator Ted Cruz, how are you, sir?
Mark, my friend, always good to be with you. Good evening.
Well, a couple of big issues here, Senator. First of all, we have this slaughter that occurred in Oregon, and to my great distress, without knowing all the facts, the president is out there. I'd say 80% of his talk was about gun control. He was saying this ought to be politicized, that he started to indirectly attack the NRA and other groups, attack Congress. I just find it so amazing that we have these situations where evil takes hold. No law on the face of the earth would prevent it. And it's turned into politics immediately.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that is the approach with President Obama on every issue, is that he seeks to tear us apart. He seeks to politicize it. And it's worth remembering he is ideological and he's a radical. You know, as his former chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, said, you never let a good crisis go to waste. And that, sadly, is his approach. We ought to, first of all, be lifting up in prayer the families of those who lost their loved ones today to this horrific crime. We still don't know the details of what exactly happened or what the motivations were. But what is clear is that every time we see a shooting of this kind, we've seen people with significant mental illnesses, with people who are violent criminals. And there is no doubt that we ought to come down on violent criminals like a ton of bricks. We ought to do everything we can, for example, to be prosecuting the felons and fugitives who are trying to illegally buy guns. The Obama administration doesn't do that. Instead, they try to use these tragedies as an excuse to come after the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens. It's unconstitutional, it's cynical, and it's wrong.
But here we are. We don't have all the facts. We don't even have the name and the identity of the mass killer, which is odd. He's been dead over 6 hours. We don't have, the basics. We've been working very hard here to pull more information up. And the president jumps to a microphone. He didn't jump to a microphone yesterday when Russia invaded, did he?
No, but, at the end of the day, when Russia invaded, that's the natural consequence of 6.5 years of the Obama-Clinton foreign policy. Leading from behind, America's retreated from the world, and every bad actor on earth has taken the measure of President Obama, has determined he is no credible threat whatsoever. And I'll tell you, for the next 16 months, Mark, we are essentially in a Hobbesian state of nature. It is like Lord of the Flies, where the only limit on the misconduct and the aggression of bad actors is the limits of their own strength, because the commander-in-chief of the United States is simply not credible, and in fact, far too many world leaders, I think, at this point, treat him as a laughingstock.
Look, he's looked as a laughingstock by a lot of us. I hate to say it, but the problem is that it has consequences.
Yeah, but you and I don't invade countries when we
Exactly.
don't respect the commander-in-chief. Putin has a habit of doing that.
Now, Senator Cruz, we've been watching what's going on the Senate floor very closely, particularly on this program. There's a poll that's just come out where more than half, or about half of the people would like to see Mitch McConnell leave. But you've got a Byzantine system there in the United States Senate, which makes it very difficult. He has spent more time strategizing against you than he has strategizing against Harry Reid or Obama. So when you were on the Senate floor the other day asking your colleagues, particularly the Republicans, to join you in defunding Planned Parenthood, not going through the fan dance, but the real way, through the front door, and defunding this give nukes to Iran deal, McConnell did something extraordinary. He assured that your fellow colleagues would not support you in any way, and that they would not go on record opposing you. What do you make of this?
Look, that is exactly right. He desperately wanted to block a vote on preventing Planned Parenthood from getting taxpayer funds, even though they were filmed apparently committing a pattern of felonies, illegally selling the body parts of unborn children. And he desperately wanted to block a vote on actually stopping this catastrophic Iran deal. Leadership says over and over again, quite rightly, that a nuclear Iran is the greatest national security threat facing America. If that were true, Congress should be willing to use its constitutional power to stop this catastrophic deal. And yet, here's the sad reality, Mark. Republican leadership spend most of their time fighting conservatives. They view you and me and every one of your listeners as the enemy. They don't fight Obama. They don't fight Harry Reid. When I'm battling in the Senate, it's not Harry Reid who's fighting on the other side. He's usually sitting there laughing, watching Republican leadership do everything they can to stifle conservatives. If you look at the vote on Planned Parenthood in Iran, 58% of Republicans voted with me. In contrast, do you know what percent of congressional Democrats voted with Mitch McConnell and John Boehner? 100%. Every single Democrat in Congress voted with Mitch McConnell and John Boehner. Now, Republican leadership ought to be at least a little troubled that 58% of Republicans are voting with me, and the one thing they're able to lead is the Democrats, and they do it by agreeing to fund every one of Barack Obama's failed liberal policies.
But isn't part of the problem that it becomes the Senate is built to, in many ways, since the 17th Amendment at least, to be disconnected from the people? And it's not disconnected because, we don't want popularly elected everybody.
Right.
It's because no longer do the states select them. Okay, fine. But who are senators even answerable to? They go home, they say one thing, they come to Washington, they do another thing, they raise enough money to beat the brains out of anybody who runs against them in a Republican primary.
You are exactly right, and unfortunately, senators are answerable to someone. They answer to the lobbyists in Washington, and that's for whom they work. People ask me across the country, they say, well, does Republican leadership, are they unwilling to fight? Are they just not very competent? And unfortunately, Mark, it's richer than that. They actually are quite competent, and they know how to fight. It's just that they're not fighting for you and me. If it comes to corporate welfare and cronyism, if it comes to the priority in Washington, take the Export-Import Bank.
Hold on, we're going to run out of time. I'd like to grab you for 5 more minutes. Are you game or not?
Absolutely.
All right. Right after the break, we'll take Senator Cruz for 5 more minutes. The Export-Import Bank is back, ladies and gentlemen. The Chamber of Commerce is pushing hard. A few more issues. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
We're with Senator Ted Cruz. Senator Cruz, I look at it this way. Obama's no match for Putin, and McConnell's no match for Obama. That says a lot, doesn't it?
Well, they have very much the same relationship in that Obama with Putin literally bows his head and surrenders to whatever aggressiveness Putin wants to do. And McConnell does the same thing. Obama will fight tooth and nail for his domestic priorities, to expand government, to deepen our debt, to invade our constitutional rights. And McConnell is convinced we cannot fight. And that is, and so what happens is Republican leadership surrenders at the outset. Every fight, they surrender at the outset. And it's why people are frustrated out of their minds. Mark, you think about the last presidential debate where there were 11 people on stage. Every one of them said that we shouldn't be sending taxpayer funds to Planned Parenthood. And we should
So,
stop.
Senator, how many of those other candidates called you and said, go ahead, Ted, we support what you're doing?
Not a one of them.
Not one of them.
This entire week, I've been leading the fight to stop funding for Planned Parenthood, to stop the Iran deal, and none of the other 10 candidates were anywhere to be found. I would have welcomed all 11 showing up on Capitol Hill. And actually, if you're going to campaign and say I'm an outsider and I'm going to fight Washington, then let me suggest you actually show up and start fighting Washington. Demonstrate you'll do it. And yet, when the fight is being fought, it seems that they were all absent.
I even said that on the air. I said, okay, now where's everybody? He says he wants to defund Planned Parenthood. He's fighting his own party. They're playing tricks. Now, why aren't the other candidates speaking up? Same with the Iran deal, because if I were president, I would oppose it. Okay, let's oppose it. Now, Senator, let me ask you this. How can it be that a Mitch McConnell and an Orrin Hatch and so forth and so on have more contempt for you than they do Harry Reid or Chuck Schumer or Dick Durbin? Isn't that amazing to you? Don't you really threaten the cronyism in this institution? Isn't this why they're furious with you?
You're exactly right. At the end of the day, it is the McConnell-Reid leadership team. They're both the same party. It's the party of Washington. You want to get 75 votes in Washington, grow government, support cronyism, support corporate welfare, support the folks that give out campaign checks by the wheelbarrow. I mean, look, it says something on this last fight. Mitch McConnell and John Boehner got the vote of 100% of the Democrats in Congress. Every Democrat agreed with Republican leadership. Why? Because Republican leadership said to Barack Obama, we will fund everything. Every bad thing you're doing, it doesn't matter if it's illegal, it doesn't matter if it's hurting millions of people, we'll write the check and fund it. Apparently, the constitutional power of the purse means nothing. No wonder voters are frustrated. If that's true, to quote Hillary Clinton, what difference does it make if we have a Republican Congress if leadership says we can fight on nothing ever in any circumstance whatsoever?
If they say we cannot fight because we can never override Obama, we'll never have 67 votes, they've just changed the Constitution. Because you're right, they're surrendering the power of the purse. This is why when McConnell announces the day after his election, we will not shut down the government. First of all, whether you'll shut it down or not, keep your mouth closed. That's not what a negotiator says. Obama, we're not going to shut down the government. He's smiling. He says, good. Now fund all of this.
What it does is it tells a radical like Obama all he has to do is whisper the word shutdown, and Republican leaders will run for the hills and peremptorily surrender. And you know, they keep moving the goalpost. First they said we needed a Republican House. Fine, we rose up in incredible numbers, gave them a Republican House. Very little changed. Then they said the problem was the Senate. Fine, in 2014, millions of us rose up. We retired Harry Reid. And now they say, well, gosh, if we don't have 67 votes, we can't do anything. Well, you know what? We're tired of the moving goalposts. Stand up and lead and fight for something. And Mark, that is why this presidential race matters so much, because I'll tell you this, if I'm president, I will tell leaders in both parties, if you send me corporate welfare, if you send me cronyism, if you send me funding for Planned Parenthood, I will veto it. You need a leader that will take on the career politicians in both parties. That's the only way to break the Washington cartel. And the last time we had that happen was in 1980 with Ronald Reagan, where he did the same thing, and it's because it came from the people.
It's a very important point, because it's not a Republican president. It needs to be a conservative president, because a Republican president, just a Republican president, that is not good enough. We saw the growth in prior Republican administrations, bar one. Well, even though we saw growth there, we saw him fight the growth. That was Reagan. If we just send another mamby-pamby Republican in there and he's president of the United States, he's going to carry McConnell's water, too. In other words, there's no great big difference.
We do not need a Republican president to manage the decline of the republic. Barack Obama has done so much damage. We need to nominate a candidate who is as committed to conservative principles as Obama is to liberal principles. I've pledged, Mark, on my first day in office to rescind every single illegal and unconstitutional executive action taken by this president. He's done enormous damage. Now, you know that when I do that, the Washington cartel will howl, the media will howl, Democrats will howl, Republicans will howl. If you have a Republican who is afraid of being criticized, afraid of taking the hard shots, they're not going to do it. They're just going to allow this country to keep going off the cliff. We can't do that. Reagan was willing to take him on, and we need another leader willing to undo the damage Obama's done and willing to stand up and take the heat for it.
But you know, Senator Cruz, there are things Republicans will fight for. I just saw this piece in The Hill. Some guy named Stephen Fincher. I didn't even know there was a Stephen Fincher. He's a backbencher, Republican from Tennessee. He's going to try and get going this discharge petition where enough Republicans and Democrats will sign a petition to bring the Export-Import Bank back in front of the House of Representatives. If this isn't corporate welfare, there is no corporate welfare. The Republicans seem willing to fight for this.
You're exactly right. Over $100 billion in taxpayer-financed loan guarantees to giant corporations. Republican leadership will fight tooth and nail for that because it's about campaign money. But when it comes to honoring the promises they made to actually the men and women who elected them, not only are they not willing to fight for us, they lead the fight against us. The person leading the fight to ensure taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood was not even Barack Obama. It was Republican leadership.
No, that's exactly right. So is there anything they'll cut? I mean, Planned Parenthood isn't even a government entity. It's a private entity where we give them $500 million a year, which is an outrage. There's other, we well know, community service health care offices and facilities that will help take care of people, but they don't conduct these they're experiments. What the hell are they? Chopping up little babies and then selling the parts off while they're having brie and wine?
It is horrific. These videos show senior Planned Parenthood officials just callously selling the body parts of unborn children. And not only is it horrific, it is also criminal. It is a federal criminal offense with 10 years jail term to sell the body parts of an unborn child for profit. These videos are prima facie evidence that Planned Parenthood is an ongoing criminal conspiracy. And, Mark, I've pledged if I'm elected president on the first day, I will instruct the U.S. Department of Justice to open an investigation into Planned Parenthood and to prosecute any and all criminal conduct by that organization.
Good. One last thing here. The Chamber of Commerce, this entity thinks it owns the Republican Party, and I would say to you, Senator, I think it owns a big chunk of the Republican Party. This entity said nothing about the Iran deal because a lot of its members want to do business with Iran. But now this Tom Donnelly, the man that oversees this entity, he's talking about spending $100 million to destroy the Tea Party, to fight conservatives, to defeat candidates who disagree with his amnesty agenda and all the rest of the crony capitalism agenda where he relies on central government and taxpayer money. This is an amazing thing, is it not?
It is sadly an example of the corruption of Washington, and it's a bipartisan corruption where you have people feeding at the trough. And, you know, one of the interesting things in this Republican primary is if you look at all of the Washington elites, all of the lobbyists, they're supporting other candidates in this field, other candidates who they know they're not going to rock the boat, they're not going to stop the gravy train. And yet the amazing thing, Mark, is even with all of the Washington elites opposed to me, in the last fundraising report, we raised more money than any candidate in this field, $14.3 million, because to date we've had over 300,000 contributions from the grassroots, from people all over the country, going to tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. That's the strength of we the people rising up, and I got to tell you, it scares the living daylights out of the Washington cartel.
That's tedcruz.org. If people want to learn about your campaign or donate to your campaign, tedcruz.org. Senator, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Mark. God bless you, and it is always great to be with the Great One.
Well, thank you. No, wait, you're still there? It's Denali. Denali. You know, he named that mountain Denali. It turns out that means the Great One. So we call me Denali now. Just thought you'd want to know.
I like that, and I have to say, you know, the next president really ought to think about renaming that mountain after Obama, Mount Hubris.
That'd be very good. All right, Senator. God bless. Take care of yourself.
Take care. Bye-bye.